The motion is agreed to. We will now proceed to consideration of S 4373. I ask unanimous consent that the committee consider the Paul Peters substitute amendment as modified to S 4373 as the underlying bill. Without objection, so ordered. Ranking Member Paul.
Hundreds of statutes clothe the president with virtually unchecked powers from which he can affect the lives of American citizens in a host of all-encompassing ways. This vast range of powers, taken together, confers enough authority on the president to rule the country without reference to normal constitutional processes. Under the authority delegated by these statutes, the president may seize property, organize and control the means of production, seize commodities, assign military forces abroad, institute martial law, seize and control all transportation and communication, regulate the operation of private enterprise, restrict travel, and in a plethora of particular ways control the lives of all American citizens. These words were written by Senator Frank Church in a 1977 Law Review article. The Church Committee's investigatory work famously convinced many in Congress that the time had come to reassert congressional checks and balances. The National Emergencies Act of 1976 was supposed to enact meaningful reform in which Congress could restore its oversight of the awesome emergency powers a president can employ. The National Emergencies Act, however, has been a failure. When the Supreme Court struck down the legislative veto, it rendered the National Emergencies Act enforcement mechanism toothless. Subsequently, Congress must muster a veto-proof supermajority in both chambers to meaningfully check the president's use of emergency powers. Today, we live in a country Frank Church would recognize, a country in which its executive can exercise extraordinary powers unchecked and in perpetuity. Some of these powers are so inimical to the concept of constitutional republic that they should never have been granted in the first place. One such power gives the president nearly unchallenged authority to restrict access to the internet, conduct email surveillance, control computer systems, television and radio broadcasts, and cell phones. Today, this committee will consider my legislation, along with Senator Peters, to restore the checks and balances that are necessary to protect individual liberty against arbitrary power. The Republic Act will allow the president to take action in emergency situations, but would end those emergencies after 30 days unless Congress votes to extend the emergency. Terminate the ability of the president to seize control of the entire American communications infrastructure, also known as the Internet kill switch, restore due process to Americans, and require disclosure of secret presidential emergency action documents, which, among other things, have in the past authorized the detention of dangerous persons within the U.S. and the suspension of the writ of habeas corpus. I want to thank Chairman Peters for working with me on this legislation. I hope that we can demonstrate that restoring the Constitution, reclaiming the authority of Congress, and protecting the liberties of the people has strong bipartisan support.
A member wish to offer an amendment? Further debate? Senator.
I just have a question, actually. Does this legislation prohibit the use of presidential authority under IEPA to levy tariffs?
No.
It doesn't? There's no IEPA component here?
I have a separate legislation that does what you're talking about. That's not, I have separate legislation that has tariff, removing tariff power, but that's not in this. As far as modifying IEPA, my understanding is that it gives certain procedural protections to American citizens if an IEPA sanction is on them. So if the president says we're doing sanctions on people we don't like that are doing something abroad, he puts them on. If they're American, they get notified, they get to go to court, things like that. And in the past, there hasn't been any protection for those. Have I described that correctly? Yes.
So my understanding is that this limits the president's authority to impose tariffs under IEPA, which is my only problem with the bill. If it doesn't have IEPA in it, then can we get a clarification of that from staff?
It doesn't affect tariffs.
I think it's not.